Hello, dear community, and welcome at AVL Creators Lounge, an online event for entrepreneurs and corporate innovators. My name is Dejan Jovicevic, and it is my pleasure that I can host this session today as well. We have very, very important topics that we want to discuss, great panelists, but before we start in our topics, I'd like to ask you, what is your background? We want to know more about you, about the audience, and I'd also like to invite you to interact with us. We have Slido link for you prepared today, hashtag AVL. It will also be possible to just scan the QR code on screen. So please feel free, we will integrate all your questions and inputs into our panels. Feel free to do so. And now we have 3 questions prepared for you. Do you work in innovation space? As I said, the topic of today, open innovation is transforming the automotive industry. We prepared 2 panels, one panel and 1 deep dive session. Is there one right open innovation approach, especially venture client model that we're going to discuss, but also any other possible open innovation methods, and the deep dive session, patents versus kind of open innovation, IP rights versus open innovation, friends or foes. Excellent panel also on this topic. And while we're asking you guys if you work in innovation space, I'd like to welcome my first panel in the studio. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for the invitation.
With me are Claudia, Christian and Stefan. I will introduce you in a second more briefly. What I really like about this panel, all of them are founders, former founders. You worked for corporates, and now you work in formats in between that combine both worlds of new and old economy, of startups, entrepreneurs, and corporate. So it's a great pleasure that we can discuss in a few minutes these topics with you. So let's ask you guys as well, what is your background? How do you work in innovation? Stefan, Carriot is your kind of field of activity. You're a startup, you work in startup corporations and scouting in Carriot. What exactly do you do?
That's correct. So Carriot is the software brand within the Volkswagen Group responsible for developing topics like the operating systems in vehicles, but also autonomous driving. And I'm responsible for scouting and identifying startups and bringing them into the company.
You also founded your own startup several years ago?
Yeah, that's correct. I founded a software as a service company focusing on inventory for automotive dealers.
And Carriot at the same time is kind of a spin-off out of the Volkswagen concern, is that right?
It started as a brand within all the other brands. So it's a first software brand for Volkswagen Group, and it's next to Porsche, Audi, etc., but as its own and independence.
Fantastic. Claudia Falkinger, Better Mobility Accelerator, but Claudia is also a member in the Startup Council in the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Austria, and you've created many mobility communities in Austria as well, so it's great to have you here. Claudia, what is your current focus?
The current focus is on the Better Mobility Accelerator, as you just mentioned. So it's a European-wide program for ventures focusing or expanding their opportunities when it comes to safe, accessible and green mobility with a base in Vienna and Lisbon. So we are very excited about that, using inclusivity as a competitive advantage. Application is still open until Friday. But as you mentioned, I'm also a founder of various networks like Women in Mobility, as well as Community Creates Mobility, bringing together various perspectives to create a better mobility ecosystem.
Perfect. In a few minutes, I'll start with you then to explain what you understand under open innovation, because you have accelerations, you have ecosystems and communities that you've been building. So it's kind of, I'm curious about the definition. How do you guys define that? Last but not least, Christian Hüttenhein, Open Bosch, venture partner and co-founder. Great to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation.
What do you do exactly at Open Bosch?
So Open Bosch is the venture client unit of the Bosch Group. It was originating from Bosch Ventures. And Bosch Ventures is the venture arm of the Bosch Group. And we are an investor in startups, and we are a client. And we follow the venture client model, and you can think of the venture clienting concept as an innovation purchasing department specialized to the risky supplier type startup that is not located in central purchasing, but in the venture arm.
In the venture arm, so
Yes.
with their own budget?
Yes, so that you have the experience and the tools and the people who have the experience to deal with startups, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So as you can see, we really have the perfect mix for this panel, and we want to be very much in depth, let's call it that way. We want to know when the open innovation is the tool to produce what to produce actually, the products or IP, or what kind of outcomes actually do we strive for, and when is it not the way to go? Do you have best practices? Do you have worst practices? We want to know everything from you. But first, let's just see what our audience has a connection with innovation. 67% of them are working in an innovation department. So we have a qualified audience. So let's get ready for that. 27% no, but in my daily work, I need innovation skills. Is that what you see in your companies as well? That innovation is being democratized, so to say, that it's needed in the business units as well?
Yes. Which company can say that we don't need innovation?
Yeah.
Which function within a corporate can say we don't need to innovate, right?
Yeah.
So I would agree.
And you also see it more and more within the departments that people are having their own ideas which they want to bring forward and develop.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm particularly interested in the people who just tick the 2 no's, because first of all, it's great having new people in the innovation area, and second, asking questions outside where you're maybe not too familiar with it, like challenging current thoughts or bringing more ideas to the table.
Perfect. And obviously we need also new talents in the innovation space, because it will be one of the very important, let's say, tools for the future of our planet in general, and mobility is one very, very important aspect in these fields. I'm very grateful and happy that you guys are working in this space. So let's start with our panel. Thank you to our colleagues. 68%, one more vote came in for yes, I work in innovation department. We hope that we'll be able to give you as many practical insights as we can, but also invite you to ask us questions. I will try to integrate them into the panel, so we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. We'll start with only one, let's call it more general question. Claudia, maybe how do you define open innovation? You said already accelerator, but you built an ecosystem and communities within the mobility space. What do you understand under open innovation?
Open innovation for me is like a Milky Way, let's say it like this. There are so many opportunities out there that you can use and integrate. So it's like a both-way direction, let's say it like this. There is no 1 or 0, but I think open innovation is the way to go to create solutions that are so much needed for today's challenges. Mm-hmm. No corporate, no startup, no university or whatever can solve these challenges alone, neither in their resources, skills, or time. So the ones who can build the best connections will be the winners of the future. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really what you make out of it, and which things you use in this big tool set, or as I said, Milky Way.
Yeah. What role do startups play in the field of open innovation?
So from my perspective, the most important, I mean, open innovation after Chessborough, you have like basically 4 groups, right? You have suppliers, you have competitors, you have your customers, or you have institutions or academics or universities, right? And looking at those sources for open innovation, startups are, from my perspective, and this is maybe a thesis, the most innovative. I mean, startups offer innovation in speed and radicality that big corporates do not, that universities do not. And from my perspective, startups are the most important of those.
Yeah. The most important, but not the only.
Not the only, but as its nature, the startups are more problem-solving driven. And I think as corporates, we come from a heritage of, old founders who invented some technology and built a company around it. Startups are more driven from, well, there's this one problem I want to solve, and I have to find this one solution. And that's what makes a big difference to them.
And having a look on the numbers and how the mobility startup scene is, or at least how I observe it, is that a lot of founders come from economics or technical background, but not really about traffic, planning, and so on. So you have huge industries who bring a lot of knowledge from years, which is so important to really understand it. But on the other hand, especially from the startups, you have this out-of-the-box thinking and so on. So again, open innovation, pair these different views and get the most out of it.
Yeah, and open innovation is quite old, right? That's not a new concept. Mm-hmm. What I think is new about the concept is the necessity to do it, because we are now in ChatGPT times, being open to other players and being open to partner, being open to bring in other startups, I think is important to survive. Because which big corporate, is it Bosch, Siemens, or SAP, can say, ChatGPT, we developed that internally. We will do that ourselves.
Yeah.
Really? Even companies like Microsoft have to partner externally to do that, right? So looking at the technology change we are facing right now, doing open innovation is important to survive. I really think that's
the speed of technology plays a big role in this, and nobody has the resources to do everything alone.
Yes.
Microsoft is the best example. You can see they partner with companies like OpenAI for this.
Yeah.
So kind of collaboration is the only
And don't
chance?
over-engineer it.
I think it's a chance to survive, absolutely, yeah. In a market of such big competition, it is finding the right partners to partner.
So not to be precise, what is collaboration? What do you mean with collaborate? From my perspective, now I'm advocating for venture clienting here, it's about having a very lean and cost-efficient way to make use of startups as a source for innovation and competitiveness. How can you be very quick and easy on this, right? And then it's not, hey, let's develop some, let's partner up and have a project. No, it's about, I have a problem, give me the best solution for that problem now, and then let's get, right?
Give me some use cases. What can you really achieve? Let's deep dive into it. What can you really achieve in this kind of process? Because as you mentioned, in the previous time, maybe in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of activity which was maybe PR driven, which was maybe marketing driven, which was excitement driven, but maybe the outcome wasn't really what was it meant to be. So what should be the outcome? Which kind of use cases would you put in a process of open innovation?
So let's take a use case. Let's take translation of videos for marketing or education internally. There are AI startups out there. There are many, maybe most of you know Synthesia. And they have the opportunity with a deepfake algorithm to, with one click, translate videos into other languages and also change the visual of the person. If you think of that, now you have the opportunity to translate it in 30 languages just by a click of a button. You don't need the translators anymore. You don't need the equipment to do a video anymore. This is not 2, 3, 4, 5 times better. That is like 100, that's 1,000 times better, right? So it's about bringing in solutions that really change the game.
Only from startups or also among the peers in the corporate world?
Universities can play a role in this, but I don't know. Elon Musk, they're always focused on patents, and I think Elon Musk didn't become the richest person in the world because he has a lot of patents. He doesn't.
Okay.
So I mean, a lot of universities spin out great solutions, right? So it can originate at universities. But by the time that the corporate are interested, and in my process, we are looking forward to some kind of mature startups. We don't want to deal with concepts. We want to test the solution. It shouldn't be a mature solution, but we want to have something that we can test.
Exactly.
Looking at that, probably universities are not the ideal partner in our face.
Too early for you.
It's way too early for the corporates, absolutely.
What do you look for in startups?
Maturity, like Christian said. The technology has to be ripe, it has to be developed, and has to be able to integrate into our products, because in the end we want to bring it to the customer.
So you don't just source for ideas and inspiration, you really want to develop products with them?
Yeah, we source for solutions.
But this doesn't mean that the earlier stage is not important, because to get the best solution on a later stage, you need. It doesn't mean that like corporates have to focus on that, but they need to support it. Doesn't matter if it's university programs or other, whatever formats it is, but you need good incubators that the best solutions can kind of grow.
Yeah, so I like to look at it as a toolbox. So you have a toolbox as a corporate, and there are many tools in it, right? There's M&A, venture capital, venture clienting, venture building, incubation, acceleration, hackathons, co-workings, you know it. You name it, there are so many at it, and all of them have advantages and disadvantages, and all of them are legitimate. But looking now at the challenges the corporates face when it's about speed of transformation and innovation efficiency, from my perspective, it's about a quick solution sourcing. How can you make use of startups as a source for innovation?
For innovation in a branch, in an industry which is developing and changing very strongly, mobility. We're talking about cars becoming kind of software products, if you talk about Elon Musk. So where is the industry going, and how can you use startups and open innovation to solve the problems of the future of mobility?
Yeah, I think saying that we are the ecosystem builder and have to provide anything would be false. We have to provide the platform for other people so they can innovate on. I think Apple, you can see, was the best example with providing the App Store, but not fulfilling the iPhone just with apps from Apple and closing it to everyone else. No, they just open it with the App Store to everyone else and say, well, enjoy, innovate on this. I think that's the best way to leverage this.
Claudia, what do you aim for with your accelerator? What should the outcome be, and who can actually join it? The early stage, later stage, what do you look for?
It's more focused on an early stage where startups see inclusivity as a corporate, as a competitive advantage. Just having a look on innovative mobility solutions, let's say car sharing, you see 20% or less female users, which is insane. So the understanding of different movement patterns is still so low that all the new innovations, and let's not talk about data, where you have a lot of biases in there, or female car drivers face 72% higher chance of getting injured in accidents. So this is insane. And including this from the beginning and saying, okay, we really create solutions, like innovative solutions in mobility for various target groups, having access to new target groups and a vast network of experts, having direct access to cities, industries, and so on, to test it from the beginning on. So where the risk is still very low, and you can try out a lot of different things, which is so much needed in cities, wherever. And then having access to funding or grants or whatever is needed, as mobility is still a different approach of, okay, how can we get everything together, because you have in some cases you have a lot of infrastructure costs. So these three are the main focus areas where we're working with different partners. Doesn't matter if it's cities, in corporates like AVL, universities and so on. So this is also an open innovation approach where it actually needs everybody.
I think what Claudia said highlights the importance of partnering with others, because bringing in this diversity can enrich the product in the end. And these things happened, which you addressed, because it was everything just developed in its own chamber and everything, and people were not included. So bringing in different partners can also extend
Absolutely,
the product.
and this is not just some social whatever project. This is an economically highly relevant one. Where just imagine increasing your user base by 10%, and this is like insane what you can achieve with that.
Yeah. So from our perspective, I think looking at automotive or mobility, the three biggest challenges we face currently is digitalization, electrification, and autonomous driving, right? So digitalization includes the central compute power within the car, but it also includes like new use cases as a driver, right? From a driving place to living place.
Entertainment place.
Yes. The electrification includes also new forms of mobility, right? New forms of energy, like hydrogen and stuff. And then the autonomous driving, I mean, is a huge part. And I would fully agree. Which player can say we can develop it ourselves? It's about building ecosystems and creating partnerships to tackle those challenges. Right?
And as far as I understand, it's about software, because you said digitalization, you said autonomous driving, and electricity. Okay, but those two fields are kind of software future of the mobility. Are you guys ready for that? Is the industry ready for that?
So first of all, I would disagree. It's not about software only. It's also about hardware. I just read this morning that the biggest limitation to the growth of ChatGPT are server capacities. So they don't scale up, and that's why they have limitations. So it's about the combination of software and hardware. It's not about software only. Are we ready to be able to digest that much software within our corporate? I think we're on a good way.
Because you do these venture programs? Or?
Yes, because we are making use of venture clienting. Venture clienting, for us, we do that now for 5 years. And basically, in the beginning, we had to advocate for treating the venture capital out there as R&D budget of Bosch, that Bosch does not have to raise to make use of those solutions, right? I mean, Bosch is very proud of the R&D budget of 6-7 billion per year, but at the end, that's peanuts against the venture capital out there globally, right? So that's the first thing, treating the venture capital as internal R&D. Then changing the perspective and the image of startups. I mean, if we talk about startups here, we don't talk about two students who like to code and have a business idea now. We talk about experienced people with interdisciplinary teams. They have a lot of experience in their industry, in their function. They have identified a pain point, and they're very decisive to solve that, and they're massively funded, right? And the third thing we had to learn within the venture clienting is to become an easy client. I mean, when Bosch wanted to, I'm a little bit, when Bosch wanted to meet a startup in the past, they rented a minibus and drove 15 engineers and 16 lawyers to the startup CEO to assess risks. Right? That's not the way how you initiate a cooperation, right? How can you be an easy client? An easy client does not mean for me being a risky client or being a stupid client, like dealing with every startup. But how can you be an easy client means you know what you're looking for, you know what your problem is in the field of we just talked about. You have the capacity and the budget reserved to solve it, to really get it done. And then you have an easy communication process and the tools and templates to do it, right? And the commitment.
Why did you choose this model? Why didn't you choose other models? Why does that fit you personally?
So I think Bosch has the whole toolbox, right?
Okay.
We talked about the toolbox. There are several formats, and we do all of them. But from my perspective, the timing is right for a very lean and cost-efficient setup, just looking at the macroeconomic environment.
Okay.
Just the quickest way. I mean, if I remember to my past about the failures we did, I mean, we're doing startup corporations for a very long time now. And this venture client model is slightly new, it's just a few years around. But in the past, we always focused on going out, finding startups and pushing them into the company. But with the venture client model, we are more focusing on what are our needs, what are our gaps, what do we need to change and to solve. And then we go out to the startup scouting and to the ecosystem and see who is the best solution provider and who can we partner with. So it's more focus-driven on this problem-solution fit. And I think that's the biggest difference, and that's the success between venture clients.
And now, let's just, what exactly do you understand by who do we partner with? What does it mean to partner with somebody? To take equity in their company, or to be kind of client, you have a client relationship?
Well, to have a client relationship, like point, that's it. We don't look for equity. We want to be a good customer, as Christian said. I think like big corporates are often tend to over-engineer things, and I think we sometimes are not the best investor because we want to strategically involve ourselves into the startup and change things the way we would fit them more. And just becoming a customer and buying the solution is, in my opinion, like the best way for this.
I just want to add to this. So identifying an issue internally which is strategically highly relevant is super important, especially when it comes to speed and resource and focus and so on. But it's not about just going like in the supermarket and buying like startups or whatever. It's not buying or working from the shelf. It's also like a collaboration on eye level. Like you still, even if they are well developed and skilled and so on, it's still like a process that you work on together on the fits and needs for each party.
Yes, and to establish that trust, I think it's important that there's no hidden agenda, right? Yeah. If there's a question, so do you do venture clienting to fill your M&A funnel? No, we do venture clienting because we want to be a client.
Yeah.
We do, if after a successful POC, in 95% in our cases, it's a customer-client relationship, supplier-client relationship, but in few cases, there can be other things like M&A, joint development, whatsoever, I don't know. But there's no hidden agenda, and I think that's really important to build the trust for a corporation high level, right?
And how quick can you start with a venture client program? If you let's say look for a startup, how long is the process on your side?
So I think the longest part is within our process, the definition of the pain point. It's so the process. So we talk about push and pull. The process on our side starts with the interview of the pain point owner and the identification of what's really the issue here. What are we talking about, right? So and from here to the start of the pilot, that is from my perspective the toughest part about the process. It's not about finding startups anymore.
Okay.
I mean, that's from my perspective, that's solved. I can't save myself from startups. There are so many great startups for every function out there.
Where do you find them? Do you have any advice for those who are not maybe as far as you guys are?
I mean, there are professional tools out there. There are professional providers out there to help you find and filter the best solutions for your defined use case and demand.
Okay.
I think so. The biggest challenge for us is rather having internally the right pain point of business impact and not finding the startup. That's already solved.
Maybe while talking about tools, I see a question that could fit into the discussion. Do you see a difference between collaboration and outsourcing? In which case open innovation is more feasible? Do you have an opinion on that?
So outsourcing for me is a totally different topic.
Okay.
I also work for Bosch Service Solutions, which is an outsourcing provider like Accenture, Avato, Seitel, Teleperformance. They take a function, a process out of the corporate and do it offshore or nearshore and try to do this function for the corporate more cost efficient or with more higher quality. That's something totally different. We don't bring in startups for service. Service is not, it's not an extended workbench. Service is not a startup for me. It's about a technology or a product that is scalable. And we want to bring it in to test it and to become a client. It's not about taking a task that is originally ours and giving it out.
Because you lack resources, for example. Yeah?
Right. So I think separating or looking at the startups we're talking about, I think we have to separate between process innovation, are that solutions we use for us, product innovation, are that solutions we use for our customers, or business model innovation. And in these three fields we are acting, and outsourcing is for me a totally different topic.
Mm-hmm. Maybe another question that could fit here as well, and maybe Claudia, you can explain how you do it in your current accelerator. How is the startups IP managed by large corporates? Do you have any agreement on that? What happens with the IP in the process of collaboration?
So from my point of view, there is no one size fits all. It really depends on the case, but it's sure an important topic. But just killing the collaboration from the beginning and saying, yeah, and now IP, well, I'm interested what you say or what your experience is.
I would say if you need IP as a corporate, there's always the M&A way and you can do acquisition, but it shouldn't be about just buying in IP. I mean, there are solutions like white labeling, of course, but the IP kind of should stay with the startup, I think. If you really need it and it's a core competence of the corporate, or it has to be one, you have to buy it.
Or also find a shared solution.
Yeah.
So before the pilot, we never talk about the IP, right? So the startup brings their IP and they keep them. We bring our IP and we keep them until the end of the pilot. And by the time we understood, okay, how does this solution really fit us? How does it help us in the process or in the business? And then we're talking, okay, so after a successfully completed POC or pilot, we're talking about, okay, let's now talk about IP. What's now the future path to go? Is this the client-customer relationship, a supplier-client relationship or not? And I think IP is really important, but to do the venture clienting process very quickly, you have to have a standard process to deal with IP after the pilot, so that the pilot is safe and we can quickly go into the cooperation. Yes.
Okay.
I think IP was never an issue, to be honest, because if you look in the past, there was only like Volkswagen Group partnering with Bosch, Bosch developing some control units. The IP was always owned by Bosch, right? Volkswagen didn't want to buy the IP or have the IP. They just wanted it in their cars, and it's pretty much the same. It's not an issue with startups. But I have to say, I experienced that startups kind of often are afraid to show what they're doing or share their IP in this way. Of course, these barriers have to work with them. You have to work on these barriers.
What are issues that occur? IP is not an issue you mentioned, but what are issues that you saw, some best practices, some worst practices in the process of open innovation?
A few, like once startups are often scared to show their solutions. You have to explain and make sure that they understand you're not behind their IP.
To gain their trust somehow. Yeah?
Exactly, you have to gain their trust, of course. They're scared to lose the IP. This is just one barrier. Others are, of course, speed, but maybe you have something.
There are many misconceptions about the process internally, right? So we have to talk a lot about, you're not investing, you're just a client. Okay, so right. Or you're not working on search fields. We're working on operational pain points, right? So if the Bosch business unit comes and say, hey, Open Bosch guys, can you find us a great startup with AI in automotive? What's AI in automotive? I mean, there are 16,000 startups. And so we are working on operational pain points, something that is very precise so that you can look for a partner, right? So that is a misconception. Then a push and pull, right? I get a lot of portfolio pitch decks of startups. I work mostly in the pull. So my customer is Bosch internally. It doesn't help me if I get a pitch deck. Maybe I log it in our database, but I don't do sales for startups, right? So focus on. Also, there are a lot of misconceptions about the process. That's the biggest challenge for us.
I think a challenge is also if companies are just looking for proof. If they have an idea and they go out and say, we're just listening to those who just
benchmarking guys.
Kind of. So also look out for this underserved but willing customers or other people that like resources or knowledge that was still untapped. So keeping your door kind of open for new formats, for new methods, and so on and so forth, because otherwise you're kind of too comfy in whatever you're doing, and you still want to have kind of this friction.
I think it's the task of the venture client unit to filter the internal colleagues to make sure that the pain points presented are not the benchmarking and the insights ones and just the learning journey ones, but the ones who really have an urgent problem and they want to have the capacity, the budget, and really want to solve it. Right? That's our task.
It can be a waste of resources, huge waste. I've seen in the past like so many like corporations just for, I'm interested in technology or in just want to benchmark and see how they're doing, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects, and they lead to nowhere, like to nothing. And
I think it's fair to just kind of also go into the innovation zoo to just look around to get inspired, but it's not fair to use the time of startup founders for this purpose, because their time is extremely limited, and I think you can destroy the relationship.
It's more limited than ours. Time is key for them, absolutely, and speed.
Then we come back to the toolbox, right? Then it's a different tool. If you do tech scouting or hackathons to benchmark it, to find talent, to get in touch with the learning journey, there are different tools for that, right?
Let me. One question that I wanted to ask, and it's also here because you mentioned the business unit that comes to us. So that already means that you have a positioning in your company and that people know that you're there and that they can come to you when they have a concrete question. So somebody is asking how big corporates, Bosch, Carriot, deal with the internal culture clashes that arise between traditional investors and open innovators, and do you have some best practices here? How do you position yourself internally? Sort of, you mentioned, I think one English media called you an innovation DJ between startups and corporate. So how do you implement, or how do you manage the culture clashes?
So cultural topics. In the first, so we do that for 5 years now. In the first 2 years, we spend a lot of time on those cultural discussions. We don't do that anymore because it's a pain in the. It's really wasting a lot of time, because what we realized is, it's not about the person, it's about the role and the incentivation. So even if you take the strongest not invented here syndrome engineer and replace him with the best CEO, and this new CEO in the same not invented here syndrome role will act accordingly to that role. So it's not about the person. It doesn't help anybody if you go there, hey, you guys have to be more agile and more flexible. No, you have to look at the business. How does what has a business impact here? How does a startup help this process to become better for your client, right? And then you can take a turnaround about the cultural discussions and really focus about the business and try to focus on a better process. Because you can waste a lot of time on cultural discussions, which doesn't lead to anything.
But it's important anyhow. Like, it's not like, well, it's not a comfortable topic or needed, so let's put it aside. It's still like an ongoing thing.
Right.
It can also kill your whole program or venture or whatever when you don't address it or have it together.
Right. So it's the coalition of the willing.
Yeah.
So I have an offer. I'm an internal service provider. Do you want to do it, or do you want to talk about culture? I have a lot to do. Let's deal with the ones who already understood it, and don't spend time on evangelizing because. I mean, I have the luxury. Bosch is a huge corporation, 400,000 employees. If just 1% loves it, it's still a lot of people to deal with, right?
How big is your department, your Bosch Open?
So Open Bosch is not a department; it's a virtual organization, and we have venture managers in every business unit in the plants and in the organization, and they help us to bridge the connection from the ivory tower to the operational business, and to get the pain point, to get the leads, right? So we have roughly 50 people with an open Bosch role.
Who cover all fields of core business, so to say.
Yes.
How is it in your case?
But it's similar. It's always a cross-functional team between each department, bringing in the problems, the pain points, and we try to solve them, yeah.
And if you see that somebody is coming and just wants to be kind of in the innovation space, then you clearly say, it's not my department, go somewhere else.
We have a checklist of the requirements we need for a partnership, and if they don't fulfill it, we got to go.
I think commitment is a very important point on this, but also, like you said, the business impact. There's always a business impact you can show for everything, and figuring this out is always very helpful also towards management to get approval for new things and for innovation.
I would like to come back to the cultural topic, because I think I didn't want to say that it's not important.
No, exactly.
I just wanted to say
right?
it's just not my task, right? This is a top management topic. If you want to change the culture of a corporation, doing it bottom up is it's not possible. It's just wasting your lifetime, right? So culture is important within my role. We just focus on bringing impact and making things better. And what I learned is if you do that, people like it. They have a fast purchasing process, they have impact, and people like to deal with startups. They want to do the job
and probably
well.
the question of a culture arises less if you don't take equity in a company, if you just really are solving one very particular problem together.
Yes.
And you have experts who can help you with that, and you don't have kind of other aspects of collaboration where you would take equity and have to really be culturally fit.
Don't mix the tools. If you mix up the toolbox, then you're complicating things. If you're an investor, a client, and a partner, and you're offering socially with your region some support to the business economy locally, don't mix up the tools and making things complicated. Try to be a professional client, and maybe if you're a big company, also be an investor, but don't mix the tools.
Cool. Claudia, one question for you. How would you convince a successful corporate that open innovation with diverse target groups is key for development of future mobility solutions? Is that a topic? Do they understand the benefit if working in inclusive or diverse environments?
I thought so, or I don't know if it was my bubble. Just recently I was in St. Gallen doing some trainings with like top managers, and they didn't know that there are difference in movement patterns, and it was like, oh my God, I don't know where we have to start to, like on a knowledge level. So it should be, because these are the different target groups, like really knowing them, and just heard it again when it comes to like AI and so on, nurse. And then you can target your technology and so on, but not vice versa. So really understanding people and their needs when it comes to mobility and how it serves their daily needs or work, free time, etc. So I think this is a necessity for like every day. And as said, the ones who understand it the best and who can use this toolbox the best for these needs, I think, will be the ones who will be the winners or the front runners.
Would you say that open innovation is also good or can address the topic of inclusion and diversity better maybe than other tools and instruments?
Who? Like
Open innovation, that the process of open innovation is beneficial for diversity and inclusion.
I think open innovation is a really good method for really addressing it. Actually, it should be the base of everything. But I'm curious what you say. But I think it's helpful for some. But I think there will be way more things to do around that.
Looking at diversity, and no, I don't think that open innovation is specifically targeting to that.
Okay.
No.
I think it can be helpful.
It can be helpful, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a side effect.
It's side
Yeah.
effect. Okay.
Because you bring in different views, right? With different perspectives.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. I'm trying to follow and multitask a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's continue with the next one. How can you manage to bring the positive elements, experience, know-how, etc., of corporates into startups without killing the entrepreneurial open mindset?
Being an investor or being a client?
Let's do being a client and maybe, or you can comment on both.
He's more the investor, like he has more this view. I don't have this investor view, so maybe he can answer his investor view.
So, being an investor, how do you make sure that you don't kill the startup or bring in too many processes in the startup?
Now, how can you manage to bring in the positive elements, experience, know-how of a corporate, which definitely are useful for a startup, without killing the entrepreneurial spirit?
Also there, the lean philosophy, focus on pull and not on push. If you push to the startup all what you know, the startup is overwhelmed, and you can wait for the startup to pull the stuff they need.
Okay, agree?
I totally agree. I mean, like I said, it's about the tool set and bringing in this lean activities, and don't waste the time with the startups. Time is key here.
Okay. For companies which are completely new to open innovation, is working with startups the best first approach, since there are many different approaches in open innovation?
You can't say it's the best first approach. It always depends on the solutions. I mean, sometimes it's the best approach to partner with Bosch for us, right? And sometimes it's a better approach to partner with a startup. I mean, a startup is like they are just focusing on one problem, and they are funded like crazy with hundreds of millions. And just imagine one department with hundreds of millions in budget just solving one thing. That's basically a startup. It's for us, it's impossible because this will never happen in a corporate environment. But in the startup environment, this can happen. And for problems that require this kind of focus driven on one problem, this is where it's helpful to partner with startups.
I would agree. Dealing with a startup is not a purpose in itself, right? It's not about dealing with startups. It's about finding the best solution. So if there is an established provider offering the same solution, don't go with a startup. I mean, that's too risky. Go with the established provider.
How can the problem be addressed best?
The best,
Could be startup, can also be something else.
But yeah.
Claudia, you're responsible for open innovation at ÖBB, the biggest main rail carrier of Austria. And you also tried so many tools back then. When you reflect with your new role at the time, what would you say were the learnings that you're using today when addressing collaboration with startups?
Yeah, well, a lot of these learnings were already addressed today. So really identify the problem right and which way to go, having this willingness and kind of a checklist where to focus the time and resources at, and then pick the right methods to really get there. Like corporate venturing, sure, is a hot topic.
And if you can solve a problem better with another corporate, go for the collaboration with the corporate.
Yeah, also if you can solve it better yourself, right? And don't just push startups in, just bring them in where it makes sense.
Yes.
And you simply have to stick to your rules you make yourself. Like have the commitment from the department, have the really need, and then go for the startup project and not just push because the technology.
For the sake of.
Yeah, for the sake of cooperation with startups. Yeah, that's doomed to fail. To be honest, like I think 80% or more of the collaborations this way would fail. Because there's no need.
The scalability of the solution, right?
Yeah.
If you have a solution that is 2 times, 3 times better, then that's a different thing than if you have a startup that is 100 or 1,000 times better. It's about making use of the scalability of technology.
Yeah.
Great. Do you guys offer sandboxes for startups? Kind of environment where you don't apply your corporate rules, I guess? Yeah.
Well, this is one of the goals of the Better Mobility SL, really having this place on the one side for corporates who maybe are kind of a bit stuck in their own system to have this freedom, but also for startups to really try it out, especially in the public mobility area. It's not too easy, way easier in private surroundings. So really getting the right people and living labs on board to, and this was the feedback that we got so far, is this was one of the biggest benefits.
You know, to be able to work outside of regulation of your corporate kind of.
I mean, the venture clienting process itself is for me a sandbox.
Okay.
Right? Because you have limited, for the POC, for the pilot, you have limited measures you can make use of, standard NDAs. So, but also looking at the toolbox. Now, in venture building, we have sandboxes, right? Look, I'm just answering for venture clienting here. So.
Yeah, but I think venture client is not about just sandboxing, right? It's about bringing in the solutions. And for this kind of sandboxing, I think there are a lot of institutes and environments where you have this possibility, and also where corporates are collaborating with. I don't know. We as Carriot don't do it directly, but within the group we have the startup Autobahn, for example. I think this is more like a sandbox area. I think Bosch is also partner of it. Porsche is partner of it. And this is where like a lot of corporates can come together and have this kind of playground and also this collaboration with startups.
Okay, in the mobility space, do you collaborate with your competitors?
Yeah, I would call it co-petition.
Yeah.
Right? So, as we said, the challenges our societies face need this kind of co-petition to make sure that the problems are solved.
Another question for a company which is starting, I think the question is really excellent. So I guess somebody is starting to deal with open innovation. Which department is the best to lead the open innovation project for the companies which are still exploring open innovation? So how did you guys start? Which department is it? Individual enthusiasts, or do you put it somewhere?
So from my perspective, there is no perfect answer. It depends about the person, but starting in the venture arm, or starting in an innovation purchasing department, or starting in some form of startup affinity is important, right?
So sure about the person, but also the company structure, where it fits best.
Where would you put it directly? Like, it's a very good question, and like you said, it's no right answer and solution to all of it, but I would say it's very helpful if you focus on venture client. It's very helpful to put it somewhere in the technology area to identify these things in development.
But it's not always all about technology.
It's
so
not.
having a strategy and corporate development could be a thing. It could also be like if you have a transformation office or whatever.
True.
You can also have a program in the sustainability arm. So it really depends. But you also need the willingness of the system where it fits best, where you have kind of this runway and not too much friction.
I have a question about it, to be honest. But do you guys think it's a good idea to have it as its own legal entity, outside of the corporate? Sometimes you can see this happen. Sometimes it's integrated. I was always skeptical about it.
It can speed things up, right? If you don't have the decision-making process on too many levels, this can speed things up.
Who do you report to?
To the head of Bosch Ventures.
Okay, and he to the
head of Bosch Group.
Oh, okay, wow.
So it is individual, right? It's his own legal entity.
It's kind of parallel unit.
We have a strategy department in between, but it's quite there's a strong management attention to that function, which is a luxury situation, right?
I think strategy is a good kind of advice, so to say, because innovation is in the core of a strategy. Strategy without innovation would kind of...
Yeah.
It's about business development.
I've seen most of the time it is put near or close to strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to say with strategy, yes. So as closer it is to the real existing external client, the more productive it is.
That's what I meant.
If you have a department that is responsible for M&A and it is clear ivory tower with far away from operational pain points, then the operational pain point lead generation is also difficult.
They don't come to you,
Yes, so it should be a middle of having a sponsor who's able to pay and putting management attention on it, but being close to the operational pain points to really address topics of need, of demand, right? And
How do you measure your success? Do you measure your success, but by how many problems per year you were able to solve with venture partnering, or how do you measure your success?
So I think the hottest topic, KPIs, because if you are not able to measure your KPIs in euro in financially difficult times and macroeconomic difficult times, you're at risk, right? If you say, hey, we have a lot of good stories and a lot of lighthouses, they will close your.
It's not enough
project
anymore. Yeah.
So we track a lot of KPIs. So we'll track like the number of POCs. We track the R&D budget that the startups collected. So the venture capital they raised with the startups we invested in. We track like how long does it take from pain point identification to pilot start to adoption and stuff like that. But I think the most important is business impact in euro. Yeah. So what is the cost reduction, sales increase, new clients, new markets? What are the euro impact coming out of your attention? And I think that's the holy grail, looking at the future.
Or short term?
So any term.
Okay.
So we take.
So you don't have forever to prove that you're successful in what you're doing, sort of.
So let make it tangible.
Yeah.
We had a use case within Corona times. The engineers were not allowed to fly to foreign production sites to maintain machines, and we tested an AR/VR solution that cost around a 5-digit sum for a year, and just the business impact, the reduced traveling cost in the first year was at a 7-digit number.
Wow.
Right? And having a euro figure to say, hey, we invested this, and this came out of it. This story is the only that counts when doing innovation in macroeconomic difficult times. And
probably also in general in the future, be it in economically tough times or not, since the process of open innovation is maturing and evolving.
Yes, specifically then, you have to, of course, show what kind of value you can generate, and most of the time we're still a business, we're still a company, it's money.
Yeah, but I don't want to say it's easy. But there are also, of course, cases where you don't know how to measure this. How can you, if you develop a new product, how can you say, okay, what's the outcome of that product? So you, over a longer period of time, have to check over and over again, and at least on an aggregated way, so on your all activities, all the POCs you do. What is the budget you have, and what is the outcome you track over the last years? I think that's really important.
I remember starting as a startup unit within the corporate. We tend always to start with measuring our projects, our pilots, and this thing. And I can just advise very early shift to measure what kind of value you can generate monetary, and also how much you integrate into the end product, how much you bring to the customer. Yeah,
do that before starting a pilot, right? And filter out the heated toilet seats just because they have maybe an effect on associate satisfaction.
Comfort and well-being.
Try to identify the pain points with business impact.
Cool. This is exactly the next question that we have here. How do you identify the pain points of your customers? Are those pain points solely driven internally or also externally? Do you only have your business units coming to you and saying, please solve these? Or would you, I guess, also be open for somebody bringing the problem that you would solve with them or somebody else then in the open innovation process?
Depends. I mean, if it's generating revenue, it should solve a problem for the end customer, like, I don't know, the driver, for example. But if it's just more cost saving, it often tends to solve more the internal problem. That's what I experienced.
Yeah. So in the venture clienting, so looking at the toolbox, right? So within the venture clienting tool, we look at our internal customer. And there we look at the process innovation, product innovation, or business models. But I mean, in different tools, looking at venture building, acceleration and stuff, we of course take external pain points. And we also see that the identified pain point lists of the venture clienting program is of high interest to the other tools, right? Because those are validated pain points you can create a business on, right?
So it's often not just one value you increase. It's more people than just the internal engineering unit.
And in an accelerator, Claudia, you're probably broader and more open for ideas coming from all sides that teams in the accelerator then work on.
Yeah, we can put it together on this platform to what is really needed for the different parties.
So you would accept somebody to just join without a team, without a product, and could join some teams in your accelerator?
Well, the teams that join or the ventures sure have to have like a fixed thing, but involving more people, it doesn't matter if it's as mentors, as supporters and so on, that really fit the goal of the accelerator and the goal of the ventures and partners, sure. So you have kind of this frame set as well, but you can also be more creative in putting it together, or this is our approach to it, and let's see how we deal with that, but I'm really looking forward.
Perfect. Oh, now I lost my questions. I guess the time is up. Let's sum it up.
Let's sum it up.
Our discussion, yeah. One question was still there. I'm trying to kind of bring the picture into my brain, but it's not working right now. So we'll take the questions and pass it forward to you. So maybe you can answer it later. To wrap it up, maybe key takeaways. If somebody is now trying to start a new, let's say, open innovation process in the whole toolbox, first 3 steps. What to be careful of, and especially in your case, obviously, what are the assets of the VentureAct program?
So from my perspective, for the big corporates out there, try to extend your toolbox, try to have a valid toolbox, professional toolbox, and use the tool correctly. Don't mix it up. And now, in the macroeconomic difficult times, have a look at innovation efficiency and speed of transformation, and check your venture clienting processes to make sure that you make use of the startup ecosystem to be to innovation.
Anything to add?
Yeah, well, know your why. So really understand it, why you are actually doing it.
Yes.
Again, not out of the sake to just use another trendy method or whatever, and really understand the problems that are key and pick the right methods for that.
But it's interesting, none of you is saying, think about open innovation. We assume that that's a must-have in general, Claudia, nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know how a company can survive without implementing different parts. However you call it, maybe you just don't give the open innovation label to it, but like it's a necessity.
In a world as this. Stefan?
Just to add on what the boss already said, also gets a commitment from management. I think it's very important to show them that you bring in value to the whole company and gets their commitment. That helps a lot if you want to build up an innovation unit or collaboration unit within corporates or companies.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We had a couple of more questions, so thank you for your questions. Keep posting them as we have now our next panel. I wish we could talk further. We were talking whether 50 minutes will be enough time or too short. I think we could speak for another 50 and another 50 minutes. Maybe next time. Thank you for taking time with us, and thank you for all inputs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.